Here's 8-year-old me, a turkey that I drew, and Mr. Peanut. Wishing you all a wonderful Thanksgiving. And if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, I just wish you all a wonderful weekend and holiday. Hi, it's Dia. This is a follow-up version of a video that I already did about this 52 set of Prismacolor. It's called the Prismacolor coloring set. It comes with 24 pencils, one that's good for ocean scenes, one that's good for landscape scenes. It comes with 2 sets of markers, one set with chisel tips and one set with brush tips. And it also comes with a Prismacolor sharpener and 3 coloring images, but we're going to color this image from Everyday Magic, which is my Artist's Edition coloring book. I made a smaller version of this because I was reviewing the set, meaning the Prismacolor set. And in this video, I'm just going to show the entire, well, I was going to say the entire thing that I colored, but at the very end, my phone went off and I didn't get to color the entire blue background, but it's literally only one color. So this is light orange, or maybe it's called yellow orange. Hold on, let me go check this. And I used the brush pen marker. Let's see. This one is yellow orange. And I really liked the feel of that marker. And all I did here was kind of like color like I was a kid. You know, not worry too much about being super neat or even staying inside the lines. And you'll see later on in the video, it didn't really even matter if I was trying to stay inside the lines because I made so many mistakes in this image. One of them being I used Turpenoid to blend, which is like Gamsol, to blend colored pencils that were over these Prismacolor markers. And it bled about a 1/4 of an inch outside the lines after I used the Gamsol. I mean, the Turpenoid, which isn't the end of the world, but it would have been worse if I did it around this little fox. So as you can see here, I kind of like to go around the perimeter of the more detailed objects and then fill it in, kind of like we did when we were kids with Crayola crayons. You find an object, you make a sort of a dark outline and you fill it in because it really looked cool, and it was like our first coloring technique that we discovered. Well, I felt cool anyway. You know, looking back on this part of it, I think it would have been faster had I colored in the bigger areas with the chisel point markers. And looking at the set now, I think the colors are actually exactly the same, except one set is chisel tip and one set is brush tip. I don't know why they would have done that. I think that if I was going to put together a coloring set, I would give as many options as possible. So I would have tried to vary the colors. The other thing that I didn't love about the set, and I'm not trying to review this again, but they showed this amazing green color on the outside of the box. and they didn't include it in the set, so that was really disappointing. Now, here's a goof I made right here. This color I thought was yellow-green, and I sort of thought it was almost like a lime color. And maybe I was just going too fast, but it was just yellow. And then I ended up going over the body of the leaves with just yellow anyway, so I could have saved a little time. The other thing about this set, as you can see, it's really hard to open these pens. I just literally gave up on that one. I couldn't even do it. So now here I am using the chisel point, and you can see it's easier to fill in bigger areas. The brush tip has more give. And by the way, that color is canary yellow for anybody who has this set. You know, I was looking at the chisels and I was kind of like, I don't want to use them at all, because why would anybody use them? They're actually really nice to use. They fill in large areas, and it's a little bit easier to control than the brush tip. I can see where those brush tips would be really nice for calligraphy. And I can't figure out how to use colored markers for art. I'm a little behind the times with that. Oh, first huge mistake. I thought I was going to make these flowers have a really cool kind of light to dark, not quite a striped effect, but variations within the white. But the purple ended up to be so dark that I couldn't envision it. I mean, I guess I could have gone right from there and used some purple and white, but my disadvantage was there are 2 purple pencils in the set, and they're incredibly dark. One of them is Indanthrone blue, which is super dark, and where is it? Dioxazine purple hue, also super dark. So even if I used there's no lilac in the set, so I guess I could have used pink, but I didn't want to use pink in the outside of the flower, because in my head I had the idea that I would use pink on the inside of the flower. What color is that? That is light aqua, which is actually very pretty. And you can probably tell at this point, I'm still getting used to Prismacolor pencils. And I don't think I had a whole lot of faith that the image was going to be beautiful yet. Or even a little bit, I shouldn't even say yet, because the yellow in the leaves was startling. The purple was startling. And now this green just didn't seem to fit. But I plodded on. I've been looking at some marker sets lately, and I saw one recently. I think they're fine line markers though, which I haven't used a lot either. I use them in a journal now and then, but not really for artwork, and they're by Emmett. And they look really nice, so I'll probably review them in the future and see how they work underneath colored pencils. Oh, and here's a cool tip. Someone told me recently that Prismacolors work really well with regular crayons. And I thought that was interesting to find out, and it sort of makes sense because Prismacolors are wax-based. And of course, crayons are wax. So I can't wait to try that out together. And here I'm going in and making it even more purple and scary. Let's see, what color is that one? That's violet. There was also mulberry in the set, but it was the same tone, meaning it wasn't any lighter. It was so intense. All these colors were so intense. And I did end up using the mulberry on the inside of these purple flowers, which you'll see later. But at this point, I just felt like I was doomed. And then sometimes what happens to me is if I feel like I'm doomed, I kind of feel like I have nothing to lose. So I just wing it. And I feel like since I have nothing to lose, I might as well just do whatever I want. So I think that offers me some freedom. So rather than being nervous anymore, and when it first happens, I get nervous and I want to save the picture and I want to do everything I can to save the image, because it does take time. Although I love it, I don't want to spend all my waking hours on one image. So there I have a really, if you squint your eyes really hard, it looks like an eggplant. And I was not happy with that at all. And wondering if I was going to be able to use this video. Oh, and I mentioned this in my other video too. That was the second mistake. I do like those brushes, but boy, these pigments are intense. And I'm not familiar with the whole set, meaning the whole marker set. What are they called? Let's see. Prismacolor Premier. It doesn't even say what they are on the marker. I guess Prismacolor Premier markers. Oh, they're called art markers. And it says they're created for professionals and artists that love the control and flexibility of a brush. And there's a single ink reservoir for a perfect color match, end to end. So both sides of the brush, the fine and the brush, come from the same supply of ink, which is actually good. Here's me attempting to save the eggplant looking flowers that I just created. So I took the white Signo gel pen and I tried to put some detail back into it, put some depth, and it wasn't working. And then I was thinking maybe I just didn't give it enough of a chance, so I just kept doing it. And sometimes that does happen. In all fairness, you just haven't done the thing enough yet, so it's not quite there yet. So I kept trying, and at one point I even thought that maybe it would look cool if the whole thing had a frosted effect on it. So I made these little tiny dots. That could have either been hail or frost. And it wasn't bad, but it still looked like white on dark purple. And the contrast, that was my son, and the contrast was just too much, and it didn't look painterly or artistic or even pretty. So so I kept on going. I was outlining the edges of the flowers right there. to try to enhance that frosty, frosty look. And you know what? I left the whole thing in here, so you might want to speed this up a little bit at this point. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but you can speed up any of the videos that you watch. There's a little wheel on the bottom of any video that you're looking at, and if you click on the wheel, a box opens up and it shows the rates of speed that you can watch it. You can watch it at regular time. You can increase it by half. You can increase it by more than half. You can double it. Or, of course, you can just fast forward it to the next part, because I'll be doing this attempt at purple salvation for a minute. Oh, and there I tried to scratch some of the white to see if that would come off of the purple. I'm watching myself do this. I'm not doing this in real time. I'm watching the video as I'm recording, and I feel a little sorry for myself. Not really. So I just decided to speed up the rest of this attempt because, you know what? I was going to say it's a big failure, but right there I'm adding mulberry to the inside of that. What color is that? It's called Pink Rose, interior of those flowers, to try to add some depth. What I was going to say is it's a failure. And it did look good at this point. And if I stopped right here, I think I would have graded it as a bomb. But I kept going. Oh, here's another mistake. I added black stamen, those little puffs on the end of those little parts of the interior of the flower. I made them black and I really didn't like them. So that's another goof on the flowers. Oh, and here I'm adding little tiny dots, which I didn't hate actually after I covered the whole thing up with gray and several different colors. You know what? Let me insert a picture of the completed flowers. They're not great, but you'll see the difference. Hold on. So you can see there's dimension to them. And so what I was saying before, I still think it holds true, where I was going to say I really goofed, I failed, but maybe all the failure parts sort of, maybe if I didn't do all those other things, those flowers wouldn't end up looking like they do now. So like Bob Ross used to say, maybe it was a series, in my case, of happy accidents. So what I'm doing here is taking sap green light, a color that I really like, and I'm going over the canary yellow marker. I'm just going to speed this part up. If you're not aware, at this point, I am doing a giveaway. That is, if you're watching at the end of November, right before Thanksgiving in 2019, and I'm going to give away this whole set that I'm talking about. There's another video to show you how to enter. I will put the link below. And I have to say, when you put the colored pencils over the top of those Prismacolor markers, it feels really nice to work like that. It feels like a slightly different texture, and they work together beautifully. Now, what I didn't show in this video, but what absolutely did happen, I took, okay, you saw me right there pick up a blender pencil, and I was going to just blend those together. But what I did instead was take a brush, Turpenoid, and I just went over the top of the green that was on top of the yellow. And I don't know if you can tell at this point, but when I put the Turpenoid over the top of both of those things, the marker really spread out. And I mentioned it earlier in the video. So you can see the yellow is now way out of those lines, which actually isn't a bad thing. It kind of gave it like a neat stylized effect. I'm just showing you that that you can either use the chisel nib or the brush, and it's exactly the same color. Just filled it in. And I don't remember at this point if I went over those with green, but I don't think I did, because those didn't end up to, meaning that yellow didn't spread out beyond the leaf. So now I took that chisel nibbed magic marker, and oh, I wanted to show you that it really, those markers are potent, and it goes through, and they go through paper. So all I did here was take more yellow and color in the base of the tree stump. And then I panicked a little bit again because I realized I don't have a white pencil. The lightest pencil in that set, well, the latest two, there's a canary yellow pencil. There is a cloud blue pencil. You know what? Is that the color I went over? That's the color. I went over those eggplant purple flowers with cloud blue. I thought it was gray. So it's a grayish blue. So yeah, I realized there was no true light color in this whole set. And if I was going to be fair to my original thought to only use the Signo pen, I was going to be a little bit in trouble. I was thinking right about here that I should have made more like yellow striations through the whole thing, and I could have mixed it with browns and maybe some beiges. But once again, I'm working on a limited palette, and the browns in the markers were really dark. In fact, it's called dark umber. And the browns in the pencils, one of them was kind of like a flesh color. Let me see what color it is. Rose? No, it's called seashell pink, but it's sort of a beigey pink. Chestnut, which is almost a reddish brown, and light umber. So I was also limited. There they are, right there. That's the seashell pink. I was crossing my fingers that it would be a nice background for the tree stump. And looking at it, you know, even when the picture was done, I think it was a little bit light. I would have preferred a little more depth. And I didn't want to use all of anything in the set because I wanted to maintain the integrity of the set, because I wanted to give it away to someone for the giveaway. So yeah, if I did the whole thing in brown, I was thinking at that point I was going to use too much brown. But then I used the light cerulean blue for the background almost exclusively, and I pushed pretty hard, and I only had to sharpen it once. So I probably could have gotten away with the brown, but I just wasn't, and I'm still not used to these pencils. Oh, now I took yellowed orange and goldenrod, and made some texture in the fox. I was taking light umber and trying to, at this point, form some of the shapes in the wood, the texture, the depth. I'm also probably not the neatest colorist, meaning I go back and forth, and I don't have that ability to look at one area at a time, nor do I really want to. I like it when it's more free flowing. I also have a funny relationship with coloring to begin with, because my favorite thing in the world is pen and ink on white paper. I think it's beautiful. I could do it all day. I love to doodle. I love to draw. And so when I look at the pictures that I draw in black and white, they feel done to me. So the fact that you want to color them is an amazing addition. So when I color them, it almost feels counterintuitive to me. It feels better to me when you do it. So I'm sitting here and I'm watching myself draw, feeling very lucky. And I want to thank you all for watching. I love that you're all a part of this. So yeah, I was thinking about when I was a kid and how I loved to draw as a child, and that was a big part of my life. When I won the Summer Art Award at Valley Road School in Clark, New Jersey, I guess I was in third grade or fourth, sometime in grammar school, and I had to go on vacation, and I was so distraught because they were giving out an art award, and we were going on our yearly family vacation, and I told the art teacher, I'm not even going to know. I'm so upset. And he was very nice and very calm. He was a great art teacher, and he basically said, "Don't worry about it. It'll be fine." Anyway, to make a long story short, I came home, and my parents said that we were going to the library, and they brought me to the library because the art summer awards were in the case in the library, and my name was on one of the trophies. And I was over the moon. I'm still over the moon thinking about it. I got this trophy with my name on it. I probably still have it somewhere. I should put it in my art room. That meant everything to me, and it still does. And so that was one of the ways that I knew that I was an artist from a pretty young age. I mean, my parents have pictures of me in diapers drawing on cardboard boxes in my house when I was 2 or 3 years old with markers and trying to write my name. So I knew I was destined to have a pen in my hand. And so I'm saying all this because I want to know how you knew that you wanted to draw, or how you knew that you were an artist. So if you could tell me below, I would love to hear your stories. Oh, and one of my favorite presents, I think I was still in grammar school when I was a kid, I got a set of, it was probably 30 or 40 scented magic markers. It was like I won the lottery. I still think about those. They all smell delicious. I was so upset when they started to wear out. Yeah, so that was probably another thing. So let me know your favorite stuff too. So now I'm taking cloud blue and going back and forth between the mice and the tree stump. I didn't really do anything fancy with the mice. They're very simple. I think they're cute. And I didn't want there to be too much going on with them because I felt like the less that was going on, the more they would stand out against the darker background. Now I'm taking moss green, and I was squinting my eyes, and I also, this is faster, obviously, because I go back and forth on this tree stump for a really long time, and I don't want you to get bored. And don't forget, you can always go to that little wheel and slow things down or speed them up. So I was trying to squint and not being very neat, but just trying to find the areas that I thought would need that color, because it's interesting, trees aren't really brown at when they're outside, are they? I feel like they're gray and they're mossy and they're beige and black and all different kinds of gray. So with the limited palette that I had to work with, this moss green was perfect. It added depth and a woodsiness to that tree, which now that I'm looking at it, it almost looks like it was cut down rather than it fell down because it's got such a flat surface. So maybe there would be moss, maybe there would be even some more vines or things growing on the outside that I didn't indicate in the picture, but that you could always add. It's interesting to watch yourself color. That's that seashell pink again. And I'm kind of just doing layer over layer over layer. And the more I do it, the more I like the way the tree trunk looks. At this point, I thought it was a little bit light, and I knew I was going to have to add more browns and more dimension to make it look legit. It's hard for me to tell you what I'm doing at exact moments. As you can see, I'm hopping back and forth between many areas because I guess, like, someone commented, I'm going to have to look that person up and thank them again. You probably shouldn't look at just one area. You know, look at the whole thing and see what needs a little bit of balance or what needs a little bit of color or depth. I'm adding more furriness into the fur. I used orange and marigold. And I also ended up going over, I think, the whole area with little tiny bits of white, only the signal white, which was kind of hard to do after a while over the top of the wax pencils. So I was looking at the leaves. What do I want to do with the leaves? So I decided I was going to make, oh, you can see how the yellow really spread out underneath the green leaves because of the terpenoid. So I decided to make those leaves more fall-ish. I also find that I like both kinds of coloring. I've watched videos and I've watched people coloring and drawing, and some are very, very neat and very organized, and I admire that. And there are some areas that not only that I like to do it, but I need to do it. Oh, I guess I didn't show the entire, I guess I shut the video off for some reason, but I just added veins with an orangey color and a red actually. Let me see what color that was in the set so I could tell you in case you want to recreate those fall leaves. Let's see. I used chestnut, Tuscan red, and a little bit of poppy red. And speaking of poppies, I used canary yellow at the very base around the center of the poppy. And then around that, I used yellowed orange. And then for the red part, I used poppy red. And I blended it all together with the Prismacolor blender. I also added some light cerulean blue in certain areas of the poppies just for dimension. And I colored the center with light sap green. And I used the shadow, I made shadows with olive green. So you can see I'm not really being too careful. And I'm kind of just winging it. I'm kind of, sometimes I have an idea of what I want the thing to look like, but I like when it sort of just happens. And sometimes it doesn't just happen, like we learned from the other flowers, and you have to rethink it. But it's really cool when something happens and you didn't even know it was going to happen. So I'm speeding this part up because it's basically 3 layers of color: the yellow, orange, and the red, in any kind of pattern you really like. I didn't really make it completely circular, or I just thought it would look more natural if it was up some places, down some places, kind of a little all over the place. There's the poppy red, and I do love that color. I have to say, that's a really nice red. That's the light cerulean blue. I don't know why I chose at that moment to add those lines, but I thought it needed a little bit of coolness. It might have looked good without it, but I thought it would look cool with it. So while you're watching me do this, I thought I would tell you a few things that I learned about Prismacolor pencils. Since I wasn't giving myself any leeway, I wasn't going to incorporate anything out of the zone of Prismacolor for this picture. So Prismacolor pencils have crazy good blendability. I don't think I've ever used pencils that blended so well. They didn't get muddy. They were fantastic. Number 2, I also learned that I should not be afraid of wax bloom. I used plenty of layers. I did blend some of the layers with turpenoid, but I didn't have any problem going over and over the layers with more layers of pencil. And even if I had the marker down first, I didn't have a problem with wax bloom. The only thing that I did have a thing with is if I didn't blend a lot of layers like I did on those eggplant colored flowers with the turpenoid, it was hard to put the Signo pen on top of it, but that I didn't think that was that much of a big deal. So you can see, perfect timing in this video, how those pencils blend, and I'm barely pushing. Look at how bright they ended up. And you can, okay, number 3 about those pencils. Layer, layer, and layer for a luminous effect. These pencils are just, as you can see, I have a new appreciation for them. Now I'm going over what I just blended here. Not being too neat either. I'm just trying to stylize that flower a little bit more and make it a little bit more detailed. I did end up going over the whole thing with a blender, but I just really love the way it looked. That yellow next to the orange, next to the red. Gorgeous, yeah. So number 3 was layer for luminous effects. Another thing that I learned about these pencils was they seem to have colors not seen in other sets. They're very subtle differences. For instance, that cloud blue, it's almost like a gray light blue. I was looking in my whole Prismacolor set, and they have a light lilac that I haven't seen in other sets. And then the amazing thing about those pencils is that even though those colors are so light, they're just as pigmented. They're not as bright, obviously, because they're supposed to be light colors, but they're awesome. So they have colors not seen in other sets. And I also learned not to be afraid of the dreaded Prismacolor breakage. I heard when I first started coloring with Prismacolors that it was a nightmare, that they changed in quality and that people don't use them anymore. And I really can't compare. I can only go by using what they have now. And I have nothing to complain about. None of them broke. And you'll see at the very end that when I was using the light cerulean blue for the sky, I was pushing really hard. Actually, you can't see that because I think the phone shut off. I might have run out of battery, but you can see how hard I pressed on the background. Nothing broke, but I did have to sharpen it a few times. And that leads to another thing. Number 6, the lead is very smooth, very creamy, very soft, and it doesn't hold a point very long. It also doesn't hold a point very long because I think the leads aren't very thick. But I would say I have a new love for these pencils. So what I'm doing there is I'm taking some light umber and I'm going over that yellow area that I put down with the marker to try to give it some depth and a little bit more character so it just didn't look like a yellow pancake. I was trying to add some white. I didn't have a white pencil, as you know, and I wasn't going to allow myself to go into the white paints to fix it. I mean, I guess I could have gone, I think Posca may have worked a little bit better, but in my head I had the challenge set, so I was going to stick with it. Oh, here's that cloud blue. I thought that I was covering it with a gray, and I guess it is a light bluish gray. So here's when I had the idea that this was sort of like the last thing that I was pulling out of my bag of tricks to try to save those poor purple flowers. And happily, I liked the way it looked. It almost looked like one of those light lilac shades that I was talking about in the Prismacolor set. I wasn't being neat here. I was just trying to get an idea to see if I could save them. And I was so happy right here. It looks so much better already. And I hadn't really even started to blend or add shadows. I was just grateful they weren't that really eggplant dark black purple anymore. Yep, back and forth again. Now I'm taking the blender, and it's faster than average, but you can see it was just so easy to blend. Oh, I decided to take that pink color that I used on the interior of the flowers and highlight the mouse. Well, not highlight, but make their ears pink and their nose pink. I was really happy how they turned out. Now I was taking the poppy red and adding some more details, kind of like I did with the other poppy, going over the lines that were already there and creating some of my own. So you don't have to follow the way I do it at all. In fact, I would recommend that you do it your way. Oh, I added a little bit of a darker green, like a forest green, around the perimeter of the interior of the poppy. And then I used that light green again, and I also added some of the light green into the yellow. I thought that would add some pretty complexity also. Oh, so what I was saying is, yeah, don't feel like you have to do it in the order that I'm doing it or the way that I'm doing it, or that I'm trying to say that my way is right by any stretch of the imagination. Oh, that's light cerulean blue and electric blue in the background. And at first I thought that I would just kind of go in a soft circular kind of motion around the fox and leave a white sort of glow behind him. But then I realized most of his face is going to remain white, and I wanted to have like a fuzzy sort of white furry effect coming off of his whiskers on the edges, and that wasn't going to fly. So I'm going to speed this up because I thought I was going to have to be so careful and not leave a line of demarcation and have it blended so perfectly. And yes, of course, I can use the Turpenoid to blend the whole thing in, but I didn't want there to be a big difference in the light to the dark. So I was trying to be oh so careful at this point. This is dark umber. I was thinking I would make eyelashes and fanciness and this and that. I kind of thought he looked cute the way he was. So I just left the eyes like that for a second. I eventually decided I would add highlights. Here's the light green again. It's funny how, I've said this a couple times, but I go over and watch myself color and I realize how many times I actually did make a mistake. Or, it, you know what, maybe it's not even a mistake. Maybe it's just an idea change. You don't like the way something looks that you think that you were going to like. So here, for instance, I started to use the light cerulean blue in a darker fashion. Oh, now I'm adding the highlights to the eyes. I liked it better with the highlights. And then I thought he may need a pupil. So I used the fine liner side of the black. And I liked it. I thought it was cute. And here's another mistake. Since I had the black opened, I figured I would add some dimension to those flowers. Instant regret. So then, what do? Do you add it to all of them? Do you add it to one and just leave it with one? I just sort of tried to balance it out and forget I ever did it. So then I took the darker bluish purple, and I thought rather than make the flowers darker, I would start making shadows in this picture. I thought it would change the picture somewhat because those kind of looked like something I would call a night bloom anyway. So I really liked the the look of them now. I like the dimension that that darker bluish purple added. And what I'm doing here is just, I'm drawing and then I'm sort of reevaluating and trying to figure where the shadows would be, meaning which flowers would be more in the forefront, and then putting some of the darker colors where I thought the shadow would land on the flowers further in the back. I used the same bluish purple, to highlight, well, that would actually be a low light, or to add shadow to the greens also. And then I thought, oh, that picture would look so cool at night. I should have made it a night scene. And then I thought, I probably still could. Now that one was just a darker green. So I thought that the green shadow on the light green leaf would just be a darker green. And I liked the way that looked. I'm adding some more shadows in front of the fox's tail. I'm not being neat because I had a feeling I was going to go over it with the turpenoid and blend anyway. So first I used the blender pencil. I don't know about you, but I love that noise. It's also one of the reasons I like to use Conti pencils. I love that slightly abrasive sound. I decided to use that same bluish purple everywhere that I thought there would be a shadow. I guess I thought there would be a light source kind of from the upper right, and I tried to take into consideration that idea when I was drawing shadows. So I figured I would tell you some things that I learned about the Prisma markers as I was doing this image. First and foremost, they are very saturated and pigmented. Those colors are truly what you see on the barrel. If it says dark purple, it is dark purple. Number two, the brush pens are, the brush itself is semi-soft and a bit harder to control. And the nib version of the markers, the nib is very big, probably the biggest one that I've ever seen on a marker set. Three, the colors are very vibrant. Four, the fine line side of the marker is not that fine. It's not like a super fine point. Number five, the colors on both sides of the pen will always be equal because they come from one well. And that's pretty important if you're working on a project. And number six, they are hard to open. Okay, I'm going back and adding more shadows now because the more shadows that I added, the more I thought the picture was interesting. I'm using the same color as before. You know what, I've said dark purple a couple times, but I want to tell you exactly what it is in case you want to use it if you have Prismacolors at home. Let me see. That's my bird in the background. That's black. Oh, here it is. It is dioxazine purple hue. Great shadow color. Oh, I went back in with a bit of a darker green. Let me see which one I used there. That was olive green and sap green. I also added some veins. that's yellowed orange. I wanted to make the leaves look like they were maybe a little wrinkly and dimensional. I took the light umber and I added some depth to the leaves and the little fox's ears. Oh, I also added some of the light umber to the bottom of his tail, or the underneath part, the part that I would think would be slightly in the shadows, to add a little bit of dimension to that area and to the leaves. Oh, his tail and the lower part of his body near his feet. Now I'm taking the Turpenoid and I'm starting to blend all those layers that you just watched me put down. It even felt nice to do this, and it was awesome to watch all those slightly rough layers blend together. And the darker the color, the more you could see the pigment moving around, and it was super satisfying. It's making me want to do more dark images. I hope you can see it too. Oh, you know what it reminds me of? Remember when we were kids and they had those sets that you just had to put the brush in a little bit of water, and you would put the wet brush on the page, and it was called like magic coloring or something like that, and suddenly colors would appear. That's what this reminds me of. It's so satisfying to watch it blend together. And the other kind of magical thing about it is that you can go from one color to another, and it doesn't really, well, maybe I don't want to say this and then a very dark color ruins a very light color on you. So be careful when going from dark to light. But I went from red to blue to pink to this to that, and really none of the colors interfered with any of the other colors. So it reminds me of that magic art from when we were kids. There's so many cool and magical things about art. Ooh, now I started blending the blue. One of my favorite parts of this whole thing was at the very end, which unfortunately I somehow deleted or just didn't get somehow, was I put a very thick layer of light cerulean blue, and then I went over it with the Turpenoid, and it blended like paint. It was amazing and fascinating, and it felt really good to do too. So I'm no longer terrified of making a background one color because of these pencils. They're pretty awesome. So don't forget about the giveaway. I'm going to put all the information in the info box below. And I'll also put links to everything that I mentioned here. Everything from Turpenoid to Gamsol to the different size sets of Prismacolor pencils and markers and sharpeners. So if you want to, you can pretty much get whatever Prismacolor stuff you need. At this point, I was still trying to, I think I was still thinking that I was going to leave that luminous white background. And then soon after this, I changed my mind. But if you're going to use Turpenoid or Gamsol, don't be afraid if you see it leave those marks. They do fade away. Okay. I was originally going to make the centers of those daisies green, and then I thought it would be kind of nice to have some really intense black spots on here. So I made the daisies black-eyed Susies, that similar to what used to grow in my aunt's garden in Elizabeth. And I thought I was going to make little dots, but I was having flashbacks to the flowers on the left and changed my mind eventually and really didn't go for it that much. Okay, so as you can see here, this is where I changed my mind and I decided I'm going to put the blue behind everything, because the more blue, the more the fox showed up, and the better the leaves showed up. And then I started to think, did Prismacolor actually figure out all these colors that just look gorgeous together? Meaning the entire set. Pretty amazing. Because I don't think there was many colors that I didn't use in this picture. Even the pink in that little mouse's ears terrified me in the beginning. And now I think if it was any other color, it wouldn't have looked as nice. Oh, I'm drawing a shadow of that bud, of that poppy bud. And like you can see how nice all the blues blend and everything. Oh, it was just so much fun to do this, and it was so much fun to see it go from pretty much what I thought was not going to be nice at all to a picture that I ended up to be really happy with. And with the extra blue in the background, it came out like this. And then I decided I'm going to add more shadows on the flowers on his head and add that little monocle just because I don't know why. So that's it. That's the entire color along except for the background. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I'm so glad you're all here. I think about talking to you as I'm sitting here drawing. I wish we could all hang out. It would be so much fun. Thank you again. And I hope you subscribe to me here. And I hope you hit the little button. Actually, it's a little bell next to the subscribe. That way you won't miss a thing. And again, check out the giveaway information in the info box below, along with links to any kind of Prismacolor product that you could probably ever want. Again, thank you so much. I hope you all have a lovely Thanksgiving. And if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, I just hope you have a lovely weekend. And I will see you in the next video. Mwah. See you soon. Bye.